turning it over to Lorri. Hang on a second. All right, that should be it. Turning this up. Lorri Coburn, this mic is all yours.
Hi, Lynn. Can you hear me okay? And maybe you'll put in the
Yes, I can.
great and put in the chat room so I can see that. So thanks. I've missed being on the Zoom. I mean on the Pal Talk because of my computer being in the shop. So yeah, it's like, oh man, I want to listen to Regis this morning. Oh, I want to hear Zolma's voice. I want to hear Karen's voice and Lynn's and Lynn and Lynn be still and all that. So good morning to everyone. Let me see if I can even read the screen. I know who's usually in the room. Delia and Christopher and Lynn and Dove and Carrie and Nigel and well, I can't even read the bottom one. It's so tiny on my phone. Okay. This morning, Nigel, it's interesting what you put. It's just light. Because the lesson I turned to in Ken Wapnick's Journey Through the Workbook is lesson 188. The peace of God is shining in me now. And this lesson contains my absolute favorite line in the entire course, which is the fourth line in the first paragraph. Enlightenment is but a recognition, not a change at all. And that is the message I give to everyone I talk to all the time, my clients, my fellow course group members, my friends. It's like, it's right here, right now. Enlightenment is but a recognition, not a change at all. Okay. Oh, so Sharon's in the room. Hi, Sharon. Okay. So enlightenment is but a recognition, not a change at all. And that's the conclusion we all come to when we get to that place where we're just tired of the ego. We just don't want to listen to its stories anymore. And I was noticing that with a friend of mine the other day, going on around and round about her issues. And this is not the friend, in case she's listening by recording or whatever, this is not the friend who's in our Course in Miracles group. This is a friend who does not do a Course in Miracles. And I found myself being irritated, like I'm not engaging. I am just not going to engage with this because every time I say you need to make a decision to be the light, to be who you really are, and there's no way around that. You've got to just stop feeding the ego and be the light. Because there is a certain point where we do need to calm down our traumas and calm down our reactivity. But after that point, we've got to stop wallowing in the ego, and it's a choice. It's a decision. And good morning, Carrie. I see the heart on the board. And so I said to her, I said, I feel like we're going round and round. And then she just tried to keep going round and round again. I said, well, I already said what I need to say, or, there's no point in talking about it anymore. And I had to look at, okay, if I'm feeling irritated, what am I projecting? Because the irritation is about me. And it would be those pieces of me that still want to wallow in the ego. And fortunately, I feel like that's getting smaller and smaller and smaller as the dedication to being in the present moment, to being the Christ gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And of course, that is what we already are, but you can palpably feel it. And so I could have compassion for my friend and compassion more for the ego part of me that says, that wants to wallow in that and wants to still have this problem and pick up the problem again, because it's like junk food for the ego. It revs us up, it gets us going, it makes us feel like there's meaning in this world. And haven't you noticed that sometimes when you get into this place, like lesson 188 says, the peace of God is shining in me now, and you know that you're the peace and you know that you're the light, part of you goes, I think I'm a little bit bored with this. I think I want to get back into the world and get back into the drama. And we do it all the time. But then that's that ego thought that needs to be challenged, because being in the present moment is not boring at all. When you are alive and the trees shimmer and the water shimmers and the people, you see their auras and they shimmer, it's not boring. It's not boring. So that's an ego thought that will come in, and it comes into most of us saying, you don't want this. You don't want this light. You want to do something in the world. You want to accomplish something in the world. You want to leave your mark or feel like you're contributing or doing something meaningful. Well, that gets us back to lesson 1. Nothing I see means anything. And so when we come right up against it, especially with our particular issues, whether your path happens to be your job or your health or your spouse or family relationships, siblings, kids, whatever your path happens to be, where all your issues come up, when you finally get tired of those issues and saying, I know that even fixing this issue is not going to make me happy. The only thing that makes me happy is fixing my mind that says that there's an issue out there to fix. And I'm right up against that right now, where I have a new relationship in my life, and it's been so perfect and so wonderful because it's going really slow and we have not been that involved. So all the ego stuff in me that wants more. And then I realized, oh, well, if we get to this level, I'm just going to want the next level. And we get to another level, I'm just going to want the next level. And so it's been wonderful, because the prayer of my heart and the prayer of our hearts are always answered. Prayer of my heart is to be awake, to just be that presence of love, to be that peace of God shining. And that's my prayer. It's not to have a relationship with a seeming external person. There's no such thing. When we get to that place, it's like, there are no relationships with other bodies. The Course says in the holy relationship, the body is not even there. And the only real relationship is with the Christ to itself. So when you get that, everyone is your soulmate, everyone, you love everyone, and you feel that. Now, granted, you're going to feel it more strongly, probably with your family members or your spouse or particular good friends, but don't be fooled. So of thinking those are special, just know in your head, no, it's all the same. It's all love. So lesson 188, my favorite line in the Course: enlightenment is but a recognition, not a change at all. It's right here, right now for each one of us and in this holy instant. And as we peel away the layers of ego attachment, the light shines more and more and more. So here's Ken's commentary, which is very long, even before the lesson starts. I love how Ken Wapnick can write so much on one line. Our next two lessons, lessons 188 and 189, share the symbolism of light. The first one, incidentally, was one of Bill Thetford's favorites. The lesson begins with Jesus's plea from 131, lesson 131. Why wait for heaven? Why, he asks, delay the peace, the happy effects of forgiveness? Choosing to believe instead, you have to suffer to receive your eventual reward. This is the traditional Christian view that your crucified life will be rewarded in the hereafter. Its message of salvation's delay, central to the ego thought system of guilt and punishment, is corrected by Jesus in the immediacy of salvation. Oh, I love this section too. Chapter 26, section 8. Here's a quote. The one remaining problem that you have is that you see an interval between the time when you forgive and will receive the benefits of trusting in your brother. The interval you think lies in between the giving and receiving of the gift seems to be one in which you sacrifice and suffer loss. You see eventual salvation, not immediate results. Salvation is immediate, for a miracle is now. It stands already here in present grace, within the only interval of time that sin and fear have overlooked, but which is all there is to time. The working out of all correction takes no time at all. Be not content with future happiness. It has no meaning and is not your just reward. For you have cause for freedom now. The Holy Spirit's purpose now is yours. Should not his happiness be yours as well? This line that says, be not content with future happiness. The brain is wired, absolutely wired to live in the past and live in the future. That's what it does for its survival mechanisms. So what we are doing is we are actively going against the natural tendencies of our brains and overriding them with our logic and with our decision for God. And when we keep doing that, it changes. The habit now becomes miracle mindedness, like the Course talks about. Forgiveness needs to become a habit. Miracle mindedness, being ready for the miracle, ready for, wow, what is going to happen today? What amazing, wonderful, incredible shift in perception is going to happen today, is what we get. And I love it. I just absolutely love it, because then you become alive and it's not dependent on anything outside of you happening the way you want it to. So you think, well, when I attend this event, I'm going to be happy, or when I achieve this accomplishment or this goal that I've made, I'll be happy, or when I'm in this particular type of living situation or a relationship situation or a job, then I'll be happy. That's just what the brain does. It's what the ego does, and it will always do that. It's meant to do that. It's like a dog barks and a cat meows. It's meant to do that. But we have the power of choice to override those ego thoughts and to say, they're not mine. They're just ego thoughts arising. I am choosing to know that the peace of God is shining in me now, and that salvation is immediate. One of the quotes I like from this chapter 26, section 8, Ken does not include here, but it's about how when tragedies happen, we often sigh and we say, oh, we don't understand the mind of God. Maybe someday we will. I know it'll be good later down the road. Well, that section challenges that and says, you don't have to do that. You can receive the blessing of every situation right here, right now. You don't have to wait. You don't have to have that interval of time blocking you from receiving it. Here's paragraph 1, lines 1 to 4. Why wait for heaven? Those who seek the light are merely covering their eyes. The light is in them now. The light is in you now. Enlightenment is but a recognition, not a change at all. There's that great line. Enlightenment is but a recognition, not a change at all. I like to tell a story that I've told here a number of times about how I came to the Course and how this line, this concept that enlightenment is in this lifetime, completely shifted me and showed me that A Course in Miracles was my path. I had been to a retreat, a workshop with Ram Dass, and that was it was about 2 days before he had his stroke. So it was a long time ago, and Ram Dass has now transitioned. But back then, he told a story about the circle of life and death, the wheel of karma, birth and rebirth and death, and about how many lifetimes it would take to get enlightened. And he said, imagine a bird flying over the top of a mountain with a hanky in its beak. And so the bird brushes the top of the mountain and then flies back and brushes the top of the mountain with the hanky again, and then flies back and brushes the top of the mountain with its hanky in its beak again and again. And as many times as it takes that hanky to erode that mountain is as many lifetimes as we will need to become enlightened. I felt so hopeless. It was like, I can't even meditate for 5 minutes. This is just never going to happen. It just put me into despair. And then when I came to A Course in Miracles and it said, no, 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 no. In chapter 18, section 7, which just says, I need do nothing, and that long periods of meditation are not necessary because you're simply fighting and struggling against something that's not there. The body, mind, personality complex, that's part of your brain. Because we all have the knowing within us that something's wrong with this world and that we're not really this. We get that. We get that at a very deep level at the core of our being because it's the truth. We all know it. We all know it. And we may be covering it up by many, many things that we're using in the world to distract ourselves. But there comes a point where we get tired of that. We get tired of suffering and say, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just done with that. And it will happen. It will happen. And I was talking to another friend the other day who was going through a dark night of the soul. And I'm just holding the place where I know it's already done for her. I don't have to help her figure out her problems because she's gone over them many, many times. It's done. And I know it's done. But she's the one who has to make that choice. And when someone had said that to me, you're the only one who can make the choice to live, the choice to become or be the Christ that you already are. And I was upset. And I'm like, what? How come Jesus can't do that for me? How come he can't help me? Well, he does help us by reminding us of truth. But why? Because you're the only person who is deciding that you are that separate person, that whatever your name is, Tom or Sue or Juanita, whatever your name is, you have decided, I am Sue or I am Tom, I am Joe. And you're the only one who could say, oh, no, I'm not. I am the Holy Son of God himself, or I am the Christ self, or I am part of all that is. I am not this separate individual. So you're the only one who's done that, and you're the only one who can undo that. The good news is you can undo that with a decision, and you can undo it in this holy instant, because the Christ self that we are does not live in time and space. Time and space is the construct of the ego. The Christ self is eternal, and it is outside of time and space, although saying outside of really isn't accurate, because if time and space is not really there, there's no inside or outside. However, we live in a timeless, eternal, present moment. And that's why the Course keeps saying, now, this is your holy instant of release. Now, today, salvation is immediate. Lesson 188 that I'm reading, the peace of God is shining in me now. Yeah, Nigel, it never knew anything. It just thought it did. That it was a thing, it wasn't there. That's the ego, right? Yes. And the ego is just a mirror, like you're saying, Nigel, of your mind, of the wrong mind, actually. And I'm not scared of no mirror. I'm not scared of no mirror that reflects a stranger. Screw that. That's funny, Nigel, because it makes me think of Ghostbusters. Who's afraid of the ghost? I'm not afraid of no ghosts, or however they say it. Okay, Ken's commentary on these first 4 sentences. When we believe we have to seek the light, we simply cover our eyes, a way of saying we deny Christ's vision and choose to see through the ego's eyes instead of his. We do not have to seek for the light, but need only look within where the light is. Remembering the truth that is already present in us, we realize that nothing has changed, and so nothing need change. Thus, Jesus exhorts us again not to exceed the little willingness asked of us by the Holy Spirit. In chapter 18, section 6, Beyond the Body, he has a quote from that. It is not necessary that you do more. Indeed, it is necessary that you realize that you cannot do more. Do not attempt to give the Holy Spirit what he does not ask, or you will add the ego to him and confuse the two. Ken says, Jesus does not want us to try hard because struggling against the ego gives it a reality it lacks. Recognition of the light is not a change, for there is nothing to change from. And that's also something I'm always telling people, that don't try so hard, don't struggle. You can't do this. The ego cannot change itself. All the ego can do is manage itself, manage its symptoms, manage its depression and anxiety or whatever other diagnosis it gives itself, manage its physical problems. But the Christ self sees no problems. And so where the ego sees problems, the Christ self sees wholeness and no problems at all. So that's the limits of the world, the limits of any transformational program in the world, any psychological program, any self-help program. They usually tend to stop at the development of the ego. And there comes a place where we have to decide for the Christ against the ego and stop trying to fix our lives. So instead of trying to fix and improve our lives or our personality traits, we wake up to the fact that they never were there, that it was all a construct. It was all a story that we made up. And that's our true freedom. But that terrifies the ego because its whole existence depends on us believing the lie that we are a separate self. Paragraph 1, line 5 reads, light is not of the world, yet you who bear the light in you are alien here as well. Ken says, this is a familiar theme by now. We are truly alien here, for the world of bodies is not our home. The self we think we are is not our self, capital S. Paragraph 1, lines 6 to 8. The light came with you from your native home and stayed with you because it is your own. It is the only thing you bring with you from him who is your source. It shines in you because it lights your home and leads you back to where it came from, and you are at home. And this reminds me, when it says your native home, it reminds me of those bumper stickers or t-shirts or decals on the back of car windows that say native, whatever state you're from, and how proud people are to be a native of that particular state. And there's nothing wrong with that, to be proud of or to love the place you come from. But it's a hook. It's a real hook. And I noticed that when I thought I was going to move to Mexico, that I wanted to start gathering things from Michigan, where I live now, to take with me to Mexico. And it occurred to me, don't do that. That's a special relationship with the place I used to live. Do I want to live in the past like that? No, I don't. So I deliberately avoided that. Now, if you want to do that and take it with a grain of salt and know it's an illusion and not be attached and you just enjoy it, that's fine. But you want to watch those subtle ego attachments to things, because those will keep you in the ego thought system. And just one ego thought keeps us in hell. Ken comments, light symbolizes the Holy Spirit's presence, the memory of God's love that we took from our native home. It is the only thing of God we have within the dream, and therefore links us back to him. Recall this inspiring passage about the light of the real world, reminding us of heaven's light, wherein dwells God and his one Son. And this is from chapter 13, section 6. There is a light that this world cannot give, yet you can give it as it was given you. And as you give it, it shines forth to call you from the world and follow it. For this light will attract you as nothing in this world can do. And haven't you found that the light of God attracts you above all else when everything here fails you? You've still got that light of God. You still are pushing forward. And so if you're going through a dark night of the soul, yay, because you realize that this world holds nothing that you want and that it's never going to make you happy, because everything you attain in this world will go away. It will die. And we can't avoid that. So when you know that the love you have for each person in your life, that's eternal and can't go away, when you know that everything is fine, that you're home in God right here, right now. And that's something I had to tell myself over and over and over again until it became my reality, that I am mind, in mind, and purely mind. And that I am at home in God, dreaming of separation, but perfectly capable of awakening. And that the teacher of God in the manual number 12 not only knows he's not a body, he knows he's not in a body. And I reminded myself of that over and over and over again. When my partner died 5 years ago now, and I would walk around the town to where we used to go, and there was so many places that reminded me of him. And the message that I received was, we're still together because we're both in mind. So that even though I appeared to physically be walking through the town without him, without his body, that wasn't the truth. The truth was he was right there with me, walking with me, because we're both in mind. And it just appeared that my body was still walking through the town alone this time. And so as I kept reminding myself of, I am at home in God right now, and I'm in the mind of God, and I'm not even in this body, that was transformative for me. So what appeared to be something really awful, that he died, his body appeared to die, became one of the greatest gifts I've ever been given, because it showed me truth, and it made it sink in. Because if I had stayed with, he's dead, he's gone, I couldn't have gone on, because I'd had that in the past with grief. That grief just stuck around and stuck around, and grief still is a real hook for me. It's a real trigger. I can get pulled into the ego thought system real easily with grief, but I don't choose it anymore. So when grief kind of rises up, I just go, no. Lesson 190, I choose the joy of God instead of pain. And so it's getting less and less and less. The hook is much less than it used to be. So that is one of the blessings of doing these lessons, is that you're free and you're happy. You start being happy, actually. I never thought I could be this happy. I don't even think I conceived of what this could be like. When I look back on how I used to be, and how I was always questing for enlightenment and wanted to be awake and all that, I don't even think I knew. Well, of course I didn't, because I didn't experience it then. What is going on now is just this being peaceful in the present moment that I never had. I never even knew it existed. And it's way better than I used to be. I wouldn't go back or take anything, nothing, not a single thing in the world to go back to where I used to be. I just wouldn't. It's because it's not worth it. So Mikey, you wrote on the board. I love that. I think of that with my mother who passed a year ago. Yeah. And pure and simple, you put a heart on the board. Yeah. When we think of our loved ones who have dropped the body, they're right here with us, because and this is kind of a stretch for us, but it's a stretch that will take you beyond the personal self if you want to do it. And it was scary as hell when I did it, and still sometimes is scary. But when you realize, if it's true what we're taught, that we were never born and we never die. Well, if we were never born, then our loved ones were never born. So where are they then? Where were they? They were always a thought in our mind that is at home in heaven. They were a thought of pure love in our mind that seemed to take on a shape and seemed to take on a form. Because this form that we think we are, these bodies, the Course says at no single instant does the body exist at all. That's in chapter 18, section 7. At no single instant does the body exist at all. Can we even wrap our minds around that? The brain can't, but there's a place in us that knows and gets it. But we're terrified of that as we latch on and attach to these bodies, and we don't want to let them go. And we all do it. And so there's nothing to blame ourselves for, because that's how the body was made. It was made to be a separation device. It was made by the ego to separate us from what we truly know, that we are the Holy Son of God Himself, and that we couldn't ever possibly separate. This other world is bright with love, which you have given it. And here will everything remind you of your Father and His Holy Son. Light is unlimited and spreads across this world in quiet joy. All those you brought with you will shine on you, and you will shine on them in gratitude because they brought you here. Your light will join with theirs in power so compelling that it will draw the others out of darkness as you look on them. And that's what I see in my Course in Miracles meetings, that we are all the light for each other, that in this room, in this ACIM gather room, we keep showing the mirror, we keep shining the light for each other. And it's been amazing, an amazing journey to watch each of us grow and expand in the light and drop ego. And I hesitate to even listen to things I might have said on this show 10 years ago. It's like, oh, so filled with ego. And at the same time, the compassion and the love that we all give each other. That's like, yeah, I know you're an ego right now, but I know that's not who you are. And so I look past it, and I look to what your drive is. Your drive is to go home. And then we realize, oh, we've had this drive to go home to where we already are. We don't need to drive anymore. We don't need to struggle anymore. We just need to remember. Breathe and remember. Breathe and remember. Paragraph 2, lines 1 to 3. This light cannot be lost. Oh, Lynn, are you needing to check in here? I just heard your voice. I guess not. Okay. This light cannot be lost. And that's something to remember. So when people say, I can't find it, I've been trying, it's not here, I simply hold the truth for them. I say, it is in you. And when you calm down, you'll see it. It's in you. It's guaranteed in you. You can't lose it. This light cannot be lost. Why wait to find it in the future, or believe it has been lost already or was never there? It can be so easily looked upon that arguments which prove it is not there become ridiculous. That seems like he's making fun of us, but he's not, because you get to that place where you realize someone who argues and sees themselves as a body, you just smile. Just smile and, yeah, you'll get it. You'll get it. We know you'll get it. And you don't engage in arguing back with them because there's no point. That pure and simple, you put that heart emoji on there with the little green thing in the middle of the heart, reminds me of the Grinch. The Grinch, that his heart grew 3 times that day. And it's so funny because there were some new visitors at my Unity church yesterday. And one of them had said to his brother that brought him, he had said when he had described it before that it sounded like Whoville. You know, when all the Who's sing about Christmas, welcome Christmas, and all that joy in Whoville, even though the Grinch stole all their trees and toys and everything, and they were still singing. And then when he actually came to the church yesterday, he's going, this is like Whoville. It's so happy here. It's just so joyous here. And it's so neat. It is so neat. Ken says, we are told that losing something does not mean it is gone. It simply means we forgot where it is. that is in our minds. The light is in our minds, yet we have wandered away in the great effort to forget our identity, erecting massive defenses to prevent our returning to the home we never left. Yet it is easy to remember it as we only dreamed we were banished from the light, which patiently awaits our awakening from the self-imposed dream of exile. And Ken quotes from chapter 10, section 1. Everything that was created is therefore perfectly safe, because the laws of God protect it by his love. Any part of your mind that does not know this has banished itself from knowledge, because it has not met its conditions. Who could have done this but you? Recognize this gladly, for in this recognition lies the realization that your banishment is not of God and therefore does not exist. So this is what we were talking about earlier. Who could have done this but you? Who but you could have decided that you are this separate body, alone in a world of 7.5 billion people, struggling and striving to survive? Who but you has decided that? And who but you can decide again? And you can. You can start saying, those are not my thoughts. Those are not my feelings. This body is not even mine. It's just a character in the dream. And the more you do that, the freer you will be. Paragraph 2, line 4. Who can deny the presence of what he beholds in him? And Ken says, since it is already in you, why would you want to deny it? Setting aside for the moment the hallucinations of psychosis, could you deny it? And Mikey, you said, I've thought about that. We've never been apart. Yes, you and your mother have never been apart. You can't be. How can you possibly be? Your mother was an idea of a mother birthing a child into this world, you, and then she dies, but you're still here. And yet that was all a dream. And so the form that your mother appeared to take, that beautiful form, that beautiful personality that she had, was always in you. It was in you and so she's in you where she's always been. She can't go away, cannot possibly go away. And I know that with my loved ones who have transitioned into spirit, that I've wanted to keep their bodies. But then I realized, wait a minute, if I want to keep their bodies, then I want to keep them separate. And when I opened to that truth, that, for example, my dad was always a part of me. And the idea of my dad, this idea of unconditional love, because my dad represented that for me as well as anyone in my entire life, that unconditional love not only is in me, it is me. That if I could have the thought of a father that could love me like that, then that has to be me. So anytime, like, people will say, if they compliment you or you see in somebody else their greatness, and you could only see their greatness if it was already in you. And so it's because they're reflecting it. Everyone is a mirror. Everyone's a mirror, and they're either a mirror of separation or they're a mirror of unconditional love. So Lynn, thanks for putting these paragraphs on the board. And that's what I see in this room, that and all my Course in Miracles friends, and not just Course in Miracles friends, everybody, that we are all mirrors of this love. And I love it. It's just, but the trick is, don't get attached to the form. Don't get attached to that particular body, because when that body goes away, as it will, the love is still there. The love that you've always had can't go away. I like that line in the text. The Holy Spirit has kept every loving thought you ever had and purified them of the errors that hid their light. It's on page 83. And all your past is gone. All your past except its beauty is gone, and nothing is left but a blessing. So the beauty, the love, the beauty, those ideas that are spirit ideas. Beauty's, how can you define beauty? Beauty just is, just like love just is. Peace just is. You cannot pin them down to a specific form. They just are. And they can't go away. They never go away. My cousin wrote me an email and he was asking me about some of my past relationships. And he says, well, what about this guy? And what about this guy? Is your heart big enough to hold them all? Or do you just love them all? And I said, yeah, because if I am the love that God created me as, which I am, then I love them all. I love all my past relationships because they were all the Christ. It's all they are now. They are the Christ now. Because I never had a relationship with a separate body. Egos can't relate. So yeah, I just love everyone. It's great. Paragraph 2, line 5. It is not difficult to look within, for there all vision starts. Ken says, the ego of course asserts the opposite, saying it is most difficult to look within, for if you do, as we have seen many times, quote, your eyes will light on sin and God will strike you blind, unquote. That's the ego sphere, right? That doesn't really happen. That's in chapter 21, section 4. That's a euphemistic way of saying God will destroy you because of your sin. However, in truth, it cannot be difficult to look within since you are already within. Yourself resides in the mind. Unchanged by your belief, it is in the body. Following the path of the miracle, our attention is brought from the world back to the mind, from the dream, the dreamer. This familiar statement succinctly sums up the miracle's role. This is chapter 28, section 2, reversing effect and cause. Nothing at all has happened but that you have put yourself to sleep and dreamed a dream in which you were an alien to yourself and but a part of someone else's dream. The miracle does not awaken you, but merely shows you who the dreamer is. Yes, Mikey. Thank you for your comments. Let's see what time it is. Okay. There is no sight, be it of dreams or from a truer source, that is not but the shadow of the seen through inward vision. There perception starts and there it ends. It has no source but this. So everything we're seeing with the body's eyes is a projection from the mind. There's nothing out there. And that is really difficult. The ego cannot accept that. The ego will not accept that. It thinks there is an objective world. And it seems to be an objective world. And you'll hear people saying, well, it is real in the dream. The Course does not even accept that compromise. In the manual 27, it says, you will attempt 1,000 compromises and 1,000 more. But don't do that. Don't accept any compromise with form or with because form has to die by its very nature. It has to. And God did not create death. So the manual number 27 is, what is death? And when you accept the idea of death, that you could even be born, that you could even die, that form could even possibly be real, you are accepting the idea of death. And death is the central idea in the dreaming of the dream. So that idea of death needs to be completely let go of. And it's not an easy thing. I mean, we have so many layers of it. But as we keep stripping away those layers and letting go of these beliefs and saying no to them, we say no. We awaken to what we've always been. So the peace of God is shining in me now. Enlightenment is but a recognition, not a change at all. We're home now. We are home now. And that's the light and the vision we give to other people. And we can't give it until we have it ourselves. But when we have it ourselves, our conviction and our knowing shines that light. We don't even have to say anything. And people get it. And that's wonderful. That's a beautiful way to live. I sure am enjoying it. So Ken says, this is also a familiar theme to reappear in the next lesson. We first look within and decide the teacher to follow, and then look through its eyes. If we have chosen the ego, we see through eyes of separation and attack. If Jesus, we see through eyes of unity and forgiveness. Perception thus begins and ends in our minds. Since ideas leave not their source, we never see or hear through the body's eyes and ears, but experience in form what our minds have first made real. And that's a hard pill to swallow, that projection makes perception, and that everything we are seeing is what we are choosing to see. Because it's easy to think that there is an objective world out there, but the Course and physics say no, there's no objective world. It's the observer has everything to do with what we see. Our choice maker has everything to do with what we see. And I've experienced that so many times in my life. And I look back on the times when I blamed the world, or blamed people in the world, or blamed the government or politics. And I can't do that anymore. I can't do it anymore because, one, I don't want to. I got tired of being upset. And two, it's not out there. It's not them that are doing anything wrong. It's my mind that is choosing attack and choosing separation. And that has come home to me in lesson after lesson after lesson. And it's the only way to live. Nothing in this world will make me happy. However, I will be very happy and content while I appear to be in this world when my mind is aligned with the right mind, with truth. Again, it's been repeated so many times that it's sunk in there and become a habit. Yep. Nigel, you're right. It's simple because it isn't there. If something isn't there, it's not there. It's simple. It's very simple. And yet the mind, simplicity is difficult for twisted minds, is what A Course in Miracles says. And so we have 1,300 pages of A Course in Miracles telling us the same thing over and over in different ways until we, finally get it. And I know for me, it took many, many years until I finally got it. And I had to stop feeding the ego. I had to stop wallowing in the ego and make that decision of, no, I am not going to do that anymore. Ken goes on. We repeatedly see Jesus's emphasis on our need to recognize that both problem and solution are in our minds. In fact, there is nothing but our minds where perception starts, light or darkness, and where it ends, love or fear. Everything is projection. Everything is projection. Understanding this characteristic of the split mind is the vision of Christ to which Jesus leads us and which we know well. This is interesting. This is really great. I've been wondering what the definition of Christ's vision is. And so I'm underlying this. Understanding that everything is projection is the vision of Christ to which Jesus leads us. Everything. So when you know that you are projecting the whole world, and when you identify, oh, that's ego thought system, or that's the Holy Spirit's correction, that's the Holy Spirit's thought system, that is Christ's vision. And you don't get caught up in the world anymore. You don't get caught up in projecting or blaming onto the world. Okay, light is source, at the source of all things. And then Nigel, you say, but what is that supposed to mean? That's the whole point. It doesn't mean anything. You try to put words onto it or meaning onto it, and then you lose it. So light is source, and it is the source of all things. And Mikey, I can only see part of your comment here. It's becoming so clear. The truth will set you free. It does. The truth will set you free, as Jesus said in the New Testament. Seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be opened unto you. Ask and ye shall receive. Okay, so now I see it. It does take a while until you're able to grasp the concept of the mind training. Yes, and I was just listening to something David Hoffmeister said about mind training the other day. And he was suggesting not trying to confuse the course with other teachings, because it's a mind training that when you do the workbook lessons, your mind does get trained. And as the workbook says, you're not doing this alone. The Holy Spirit is taking over your mind. Ego cannot do it. You don't have to believe the lessons. You just do what it says, and your mind will shift. And it does. Now, that doesn't mean to say you can't read other spiritual paths, Advaita Vedanta or Buddhism or anything like that, because God is in everything. So the training of the mind can happen as long as you are aware of, this is mind training. I am training away from the ego thought system, learning to identify what that is, and choosing again and again and again, choosing the truth of my being, accepting that I am the Christ self, and sticking to that very diligently, completely. It's a firm decision. Yeah, Mikey, you're grateful. I am grateful. Oh, thanks, Sharon. Yeah, I'm great. I am so grateful for all of you, and so grateful for this course and for ACIM Gather. Oh my gosh, Lynn and Dove, what you have done is just such a blessing to the world. And in my course meeting last night, one of the members was saying, he goes, you just don't realize that even we only had 5 people there last night, even only the 5 people, how that's rippling out into the world, how that light is going out and affecting so many. And yeah, Lynn, it's all part of your training, and it's our training. I just have to laugh that, Lynn, so many of yours and my ego opinions, especially about COVID and vaccines and science and all that, they differ so much, but they're just ego opinions. And so I, I appreciate you so much, my sister, because I love you so much, and it makes me laugh. So when we could laugh at the ego differences, like, of course, this is a world of opposites. You're going to have opposite opinions. And that's why we go home with our brother, because we unify those opposites, and we don't believe them. I don't believe any of them. It's so funny, because I was telling a friend of mine who very much believes in the vaccines. I said, then you take the vaccine. You're supposed to take the vaccine. I'm not supposed to at this point. Maybe I will tomorrow. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's your mind. It's your mind. Yes, Lynn, it's all a story. I told him, I said, I don't even really believe in the vaccines. I mean, I do take vaccines, and I do believe in some of them. I just don't like the COVID one. But I was very grateful that the vaccine came out, because the mass of the world believed in it. And so I knew it was going to wipe out COVID. And it's like, so cool. Yeah, yes, yes. But I also knew that it was because it was beliefs. It was because of our beliefs, that the world is a projection of what we believe. And so I am so grateful for COVID, because it helped me forgive the world. It really was big on helping me forgive the world and see that it truly is all my own projection. And I don't. Sorry about that. Okay, phone call came in, and I had to decline it. So it is all a projection story. So I am grateful to COVID for that, because it helped heal my mind. Go figure. So everything, Holy Spirit uses everything to wake us up. Right, Nigel, it's never been real. Everything in time and space is, it's all a story, as Lynn put on the board. It's all a story. None of it's real. So Christ's vision, I like this definition. Understanding the characteristic of the split mind is the vision of Christ. And he quotes from chapter 13, section 5 here. Vision depends on light. You cannot see it in darkness. You cannot see in darkness. And that reminds me of lesson 91. Miracles are seen in light. And lesson 92, miracles are seen in light, and light and strength are one. So vision depends on light. You cannot see in darkness. And lesson, I think it's 43 or around there, God is the light in which I see. And God is my strength. Vision is his gift. Lesson 42. I love that one because when I get all upset and I'm seeing the world and I'm seeing problems, I'll just repeat those and say, it's already done. Thank you. You've already given me the gift of vision. Thank you. You cannot see in darkness, yet in darkness, in the private world of sleep, you see in dreams, although your eyes are closed. And it is here that what you see, you made. But let the darkness go, and all you made you will no longer see. For sight of it depends upon denying vision. And this reminds me of lesson 130. It is impossible to see two worlds. So when we see one, we lose the other one. For sight of it depends upon denying vision. And then the opposite is true. Acceptance of your holy self, your Christ self, depends on denying the ego. You must deny the ego. And so many spiritual paths talk about embracing the ego. And that's good. That's all well and good. We do have to embrace our shadow side, our ego traits, all the junk in the world. We have to embrace it and love it, but also while knowing it's not real. So there's a difference between embracing it and making it real, and embracing it and knowing that it's not real. And many systems in psychology stop at the point of embracing it, but don't take that next step of saying, that's not real and I'm choosing what is real. And that's an extremely important point. And I've noticed with people that I work with that when I say that to them, oh boy, does the ego resistance come up, because that's the death of the ego. And the ego does not want to hear that. It does not want to hear that it can't hold on to itself and to the things it likes in this world. And as Hoffmeister will say, of all these illusions, all these ego illusions, which do you prefer? Because there's still preferences of ego. You're choosing among what's not real. And do you really want to choose that? Or do you want to choose truth? Truth or illusion? No compromise. Yep, Dove, embrace, don't deny. So I see it's 11:59 Eastern time. Time for me to let go of the mic. And thank you, Lynn and Dove, for this venue. And Lynn Castaldo is on next, and I hope your internet's going okay. And I will hopefully next Monday be back on Pal Talk, or be able to join in and hear the rest of you guys, because my computer's in the shop. So, all right, see you guys. Bye.
Thank you so much, Lorri Coburn. Bless you. And wow, what a wonderful teaching. I always appreciate it so much. All right, let's stop this and stop this.